Hi, this is Jason from Natural Gallant Bodybuilding on YouTube, and you are listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. Chapter 23 begins with Tentier's decision to leave the chest alone and return to the others. While he's been away, the companions have busied themselves with other things. Fairwind, still unable to see in the dark, goes deep into prayer. Durrani tries to keep himself from following his brother, and Achillea and Cord examine the wand taken from the Royal Magus' slab. When Fairwind comes out of his meditation, he tells the others that he has been prideful, having cast himself as the redeemer of this land. Now he realizes that altruism, like the kind Achillea and the others have shown to him, is the greatest virtue. To show that he means it, Fairwind performs his first ever miracle of healing, not on himself, but on Cord. This is about the time that Tentier returns. The others are relieved to see him, and although they are interested to learn what he discovered, they decide not to investigate the crypt and its contents any further. The PCs leave the dungeon, and in the evening, as they shelter in Fairwind's chapel, the cleric offers to join the party. Chapter 24, Part 1, Day 17, Morning, Mythic Event Meaning, Propose Weapons, Party Status, Achillea, 9 out of 9 hit points, Cord, 14 out of 14 after receiving 1 point of natural healing, Durrani, 9 out of 9, Tentier, 10 out of 10, Fairwind, 11 out of 18 after receiving 1 point of natural healing. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink, Message, and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle, Locate Plants and Animals, and Slow Poison. Fairwind can cast Purify Food and Water. Achillea's wand turned out to be a deep violet color, not black, as she had earlier thought when she had only seen it by dark vision. She held it while she studied, and the whole time, she could feel a spiritual connection to it that helped her focus her thoughts. Perhaps that's why one of her heretofore unreadable spells in her book suddenly became clear and opened its secrets to her. While Achillea memorized her new spell of Glitter Dust, Fairwind picked up a few belongings: his cudgel, a sling, a traveling pack he was using as a pillow, a water skin, some quills and reed lights made from duck feathers and duck fat, a flint and steel, his holy symbol, and finally, a slim prayer book. This last item he did not pack right away. Instead, he flipped through its pages and selected a brief prayer for safe travel. By the time he was done, Cord, Durrani, and Tentier had returned. Tentier had his new sword in his hand and looked about as pleased as Achillea had ever seen him. Durrani carried a bucket filled with water. He filled their water skins and used what was left to clean Fairwind's bandage. The diagonal cut across the cleric's chest, where the undead warrior's sword had cut him, looked angry and puckered. The bandage had absorbed a lot of blood, and the water in the bucket was soon tinted red with it. Durrani had been unable to find any of the plants he might have used to make a poultice, so the bandage, after being wrung out, was once again applied directly to the wound, as the elf carefully wrapped it around Fairwind's chest. After that, it was time to go. Fairwind gave one last bittersweet look around his modest home, and then stepped out the door, wondering if he would ever see the place again. It looks like the hex crawl is about to resume, so I'm going to need some dice. Let's see. A d20 for weather. I got a 6. By noon, it will be a hot and sweaty day. Not ideal for a long hike, but not so bad. The next roll is for stumble upon. And 19. The gods are teasing me, as they like to do. A 19 is close, but no result. Well, all I really want for the party is a nice, safe day of travel. That brings us to wandering encounters. For this region, only on a 5 or 6 will there be one. The roll. A 2. That's relief. It only took a half hour for the companions to reach the northern boundary of the Kaymor lands. Along the way, they passed by plenty of shapeless ruins, overgrown with crabgrass and coarse bracken. As they picked their way over and around the toppled stones, Durrani occasionally stopped the group to adjust Fairwind's bandages, which refused to stay in place. Finally, mildly frustrated, he asked Achillea to ask the cleric if he could not heal himself the way he had healed Cord the day before.
I could, yes, but I will not. The scar that forms here,
Fairwind said, drawing an imaginary line across his front,
will ever be a reminder of who I am supposed to be.
That was all the answer he provided, so Durrani had to accept it. He also had to admit that he didn't know much about divine magic, so who was he to judge? The Kaymor settlement was nestled inside the bend of a river that cut a horseshoe shape in the land, and so the companions knew they were leaving it when they reached the water. Connecting this bank and the far one was the ruin of a bridge. Most of the structure was still intact. It was a flat plain resting atop a series of 5 arches, all in stone. The bridge was in such good condition that the face of a woman sculpted on the right side was still easy to make out despite being time-worn. By the way the face's mouth hung open, Achillea guessed that it would, once upon a time, have spouted water, but it no longer did so. Perhaps whatever hidden pipe or channel that would have fed it had become clogged over the centuries. The stone face was not pleasant to look upon, and every member of the party was reminded of the Queen's wraith and how she looked not dissimilar. Nobody mentioned it, though, and the companions crossed the bridge in silence, with Tentir in the lead, followed by Durrani, Cord and Robin, then Achillea and Fairwind. On the far side, they took the opportunity to drink all they could manage and to fill their water skins. They could not follow the river and still head north. They maintained their single-file order and resumed the march, leaving the Kaymor ruins and the river behind. The land on this side was more vibrant and more green. Even the air was fresher here, and so, despite the hot sun that made their clothes sticky with sweat, their spirits were high. After a time, Fairwind tapped Achillea on the shoulder. She looked back and raised her eyebrows in question, without breaking stride.
Why is it that we walk in single file?
He asked. Achillea had been wondering the same thing since she met Durrani and was not certain of the answer.
It is the elven way,
was her vague reply. Fairwind was not satisfied.
Yes, but why do the elves do it that way? My old friend and I would always walk side by side, so we could talk, pass the time.
Achillea was thankful that Durrani and Tentir could not speak the common tongue, because she had to take a guess.
Elves walk in single file, to hide their numbers, of course.
Achillea correctly guessed the main reason that elves walk in a single line, but there is a second reason. Unlike humans, they prefer to move without much talk. This keeps them more alert and is less likely to scare off game. With all the chatter at the rear of the line, it won't be long before Durrani gives Achillea the eye, and she's smart enough to take the hint. After that, the companions will spend the rest of the day walking in silence. Now, I don't think it would be very interesting to narrate that, so I'll skip ahead, saying they eventually find a good place to make camp, and do so. That means it's time for another set of hex crawl rolls. For weather on day 18. Oof, a 2. I'm going to say that they face sweltering heat and are forced to use 2 days' worth of water to cover the usual distance. It may affect how other rolls play out too. Stumble upon. I got an 11, nothing there. I need to add an on-the-go foraging roll for this day. Day 17 probably should have had one, I now realize, but that's no big deal. I can imagine they all finish up whatever broth was left over from Fairwind's duck before they set out. The rules say that foraging is only successful on a roll of 1 on a d6, but I've already ruled in the past that if Cord casts Locate Plants and Animals, the chances would go up to 3 and 6, so a 1 to 3 on a d6 will indicate success. The roll. A 3. Cord is able to find a single pear tree with enough fruit to sustain the PCs for a single day. Last up is Wandering Encounters. A 5 to 6 will mean there is one. Rolling a d6. A 1. That's another day without incident. Very lucky. You know, I should break up all these mechanics with a bit of story, so let's do that. But first, an actual break. Be right back after these messages. Chapter 24. Part 2. Day 18. Late afternoon. Mythic event meaning. Propose weapons. Party status. Achillea, 9 out of 9 hit points. Cord, 14 of 14. Dureni, 9 out of 9. Tentir, 10 out of 10. Fairwind, 12 out of 18 after receiving 1 point of natural healing. Supplies. The companions have no food and 20 portions of water remaining. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink, Message, and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle and Slow Poison. Fairwind can cast Purify Food and Water. The pears Cord had found for them in the morning had been tasty, but by late afternoon, marching north in the sweltering heat, the companions' hunger was back, but far worse was their thirst. They stopped frequently to drink, and Achillea noticed with some alarm that the weight of her water skin was already significantly lighter. It was during one of these water breaks that Tentir began to complain.
Jugin's braid. How much farther did you say we had to go?
If Valkeen was right, we are almost halfway there,
was Dureni's answer.
Halfway?
Sputtered Tentir, spitting over the top of his raised water skin.
Halfway, little mouse. And don't waste your water.
Tentir fixed the plug on his skin and scowled.
All this walking is killing me. I wish we could just be there already. Achillea, can't you just wave your wizarding stick and take us there?
Although his words were clearly meant in sarcasm, there was no lightness in his tone. Neither was there any hint of a smile in his eyes when he huffed.
Let's just get on with it.
Tentir might have been tired and unhappy, but as they fell back into line and resumed the march, Achillea could not help but smile inwardly. The young elf's comments had awakened a sweet memory. Dramatis Personae. Achillea.
Oh, I hate all this work.
Said 10-year-old Achillea, pouring another bucket of water into the big cauldron. It was her 4th trip back from the river, and she still had 2 more trips to go before she would be done.
Don't say that, Begme.
Aldve chastised gently.
There's nothing wrong with honest toil.
It's boring, and it's hard, and I hate it.
Achillea pouted her best pout, but Aldve appeared to be immune to it.
Couldn't you just teach me some kind of spell to make it easier?
Not yet.
Fabby.
She whined at him.
What's the use of magic if you don't use it to make life easier?
Perhaps you do need a break.
Can I stop for the day?
No, but you can take a rest and have some tea. I'll tell you a story while you drink it.
Achillea was disappointed not to be free of her chores early, but she did take the offered break and set about making tea. While they drank from their steaming cups, Aldve told her a fable that she would quickly forget, but then remember again years later. This is how it went.
Once upon a time, in the small village of Droth, there was a Fletcher named Tomar, who spent long hours crafting arrows from dawn until dusk. Tomar often dreamed of days when he could rest and enjoy life outside the workshop. One morning, while gathering wood in the forest, he stumbled upon a smooth, pretty stone in the middle of a circle of toadstools. On impulse, he picked it up. It It was at that moment that a tiny face, it was no bigger than your thumb, Achillia, appeared from behind the largest toadstool. The face belonged to a little man, pale as snow and naked as a baby. Behind his back were folded wings like bees' wings, and on his head was a circlet made from an acorn cap. "This is a magic stone," said the strange little man. "With it, you can wish away the hours of work, and time will pass so you may do as you please." This was truly a treasure, Tomar thought. "Is it mine to keep?" he asked excitedly. "Of course not," replied the tiny man. "We fairy folk never give or take, but we will always make a trade." Tomar was a little disappointed. He did not think he had anything of value to barter with. "I am but a poor Fletcher," he declared. "What can I offer you?" "You have eyes the color of mistletoe," said the fairy. This was true. Tomar did have beautiful eyes. "I will take the green of them, and you may have the stone." Without hesitation, Tomar agreed. He put the stone in his pocket and went home. Later that day, he sat at his workbench and, with his goose feathers and pots of glue and his arrow shafts and heads all about him, set to work. After only a few minutes, his curiosity got the better of him. He took the magic stone from his pocket and wished that the work day was over. In an instant, everything changed. His work table was now clear of equipment and had a score of arrows complete and bundled on it instead. When he looked out the window, it was dark. The stone had worked. He jumped out of his chair and danced around the single room of the house where he lived all alone. The next day he couldn't resist trying it again. Once again the magic worked. Another score of arrows had been finished without an ounce of effort. Now Tomar felt like the luckiest man in the world. Imagine! He would never know toil again for the rest of his life. Tomar used the stone every morning from then on, and bundle after bundle of good quality arrows appeared on his desk each evening. All he had to do was buy the materials. Eventually, he found he could also use the stone to avoid the hassle of buying those, as well as doing his shopping, cleaning his house, and cooking his dinner. One day, many years later, Tomar reached for the stone and noticed that his hand had become wrinkled. He touched his face and found a long, stringy beard on his chin. He blinked his eyes and suddenly let out a great sob. He was an old man. He had no memories, no interests, and no one had ever asked him why his eyes had changed color, because he had not one single friend. Tomar had wished away his entire life.
You know, I think I've been carrying the germ of that fable in my head for years. During much of my working life, I found that, like Tomar, I was often wishing my life away, trying to make it to the next weekend or the next holiday. Nowadays, I don't feel like that anymore. Every day is just a day. Anyway, I hope Aldvay's story was a nice palate cleanser, because it's time to get back to the game. This episode is a level-up episode for Doreni. Usually I'll try to tie these to distinct moments in the narrative, but it isn't always possible. I think this is one of those cases where nothing is really happening in the moment to justify the change. However, considering what Doreni has just been through, it's a mountain of experience. For reaching level 3, he's going to get a d6 of new hit points, chances for stat increases, and, best of all, he'll enjoy his first bonus to hit of +1. This modifier applies to missile and melee attacks, but not to damage. Okay, here comes a d6 for new hit points. A 3. Well, that's a little disappointing, but you can't win them all, I guess. His current total and maximum of 9 goes to 12. Next up is potential stat increases. For strength, I've got a 4. Intelligence, a 2. How about for wisdom? Another 2. Dexterity, now this would be nice. No, I've got a 5. Constitution, a 2. And last chance, charisma, a 3. Woof, that was a bit underwhelming. I'd call it a level up dud if it weren't for the attack bonus. At least that's something we're sure to see in action. Well, with that done, we are back to daily hex rolls for day 19. Weather. A 12. The heat is gone and the day is mild and comfortable. Stumble upon. 17. Nothing there. Foraging, with Cord's help. A 2. That's a success. Dureni has the idea to ask if Cord could use his magic to find them a rabbit, and he does. They only manage to catch one, but it's enough to feed everyone for the day. The last roll will be for wandering encounters. A 5 or 6 on a d6 will indicate that there is one. If that does happen, I'll need to cook up a new table. Here's the roll. A 4. Ooh, that was close. No wandering encounter. However, I'm going to flash my DM badge at this point and force an event. Chapter 27, Part 3, Day 19, Early Evening. Mythic Event Meaning. Propose Weapons. Party Status. Achillea, 9 of 9 hit points. Cord, 14 of 14. Dureni, 9 of 9. Tentir, 10 of 10. Fairwind, 13 out of 18, after receiving 1 point of natural healing. Supplies. The companions have no food and 16 portions of water remaining. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink, Message, and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle and Slow Poison. Fairwind can cast Purify Food and Water. Earlier in the day, when they had taken their first rest and Tentir had started complaining again, Achillea had entertained the rest of her party with Aldbay's story about Tomar the Fletcher and his magic stone, translating for Fairwind and Cord as she went. The cleric had nodded sagely at the story's obvious moral lesson, saying,
True. Scripture tells us that the end of the melody is not its aim.
In contrast, Dureni and Tentir had exchanged conspiratorial grins before bursting into laughter.
What's so funny?
Achillea had asked. Dureni had wiped a mirthful tear from the corner of his eye and replied,
It's just that no self-respecting Fletcher would ever use goose feathers.
Achillea had knit her brow in response, while muttering,
I don't think that's the fable's intended takeaway.
Dureni had then produced one of his own arrows and showed her the fletching.
Eagle feathers, if you can get them. Wild turkey, if you can't. Also, the glue is unnecessary. A skilled Fletcher cuts grooves, like so.
Achillea had just rolled her eyes and suggested they keep going. The day's march took them through a small wooded area, then a grassy sward where Cord pointed out a good place to hunt, and Tentir shot a rabbit for their dinner. After that, the land began to rise, and the companions had to alter their course slightly to avoid the occasional hillock. They had just come round one of these when they saw it. A tower of metal atop a hill, not a quarter-mile distant. It caught the rays of the sun, which was still high in the western sky, making it gleam like a star. Thank you very much for listening to Tale of the Manticore. If you'd like to support the show, there are lots of ways to help. You can recommend the show online, you can like and repost episode announcements on social media, you can pick up one of my offerings for sale. A quick reminder here, my brand new One Shot in the Dark expansion module is 99 cents on DriveThruRPG, and the expansion module maker kit is there for free. You can also buy a Tale of the Manticore t-shirt at www.beararts.store. Finally, you can rate or review the show on your podcatcher of choice. I am ever grateful for your support. At this point, I'd like to share a listener review. This one was left by Agent 6 on Apple Podcasts. Agent 6 writes, I've only just finished the first season, but I have to leave a review as to how awesome this show is. The storytelling is fantastic, and the mix of old school and actual play just works. Production quality and consistency also make this show a standout. This has inspired me to get back to playing an older edition of the game myself. I can't wait to start Season 2. Agent 6, you said a bunch of stuff there that makes me smile. So happy that you enjoyed Season 1. Even happier that you're going to start Season 2. But most of all, I am so glad that you've decided to get back to OSR games. Let chaos roll, Agent 6. Next, I'd like to thank my fabulous cast of actors. the core cast is here. Kyellen as Durrani, Kevin Berenger as Tentier, and David Cooper as Fairwind. And I am always thrilled to have Andrew Fling back in the mix. Andrew, of course, plays Aldve, and what a great job he did telling the Fletcher's tale, too. Thanks Kyellen, Kevin, David, and Andrew. For those curious to learn a bit more about Tale of the Manticore, I keep a blog where I post all kinds of show and RPG-related stuff, like art, maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.blogspot.com. To get in touch with me, I'm at Manticore Tale on X, taleofthemanticore.bluesky.social, Tale of the Manticore Podcast on Instagram, or taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. Oh, one more thing. If you're listening to this on or near the actual date of release, I'll be at ArdCon in Calgary in a few days. I'll be giving a talk on solo play and hopefully playing a ton of games. Say hello if you're planning to attend. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore. It's the story where chaos rolls.